A correspondent special now on BBC Two. Steve Bradshaw investigates allegations of corruption in Pakistan.
This is a strange story that begins in an ordinary street in Essex. It's a story that leads from Ilford to Islamabad. Nawaz Sharif's first run for Prime Minister was in 1990. Financial controversy has dogged his political career. He and party colleagues are said to have been paid money from a state bank for their campaigns. It's alleged that military intelligence agents secretly gave them briefcases of cash. Submitted to the court, the intelligence officer who allegedly acted as the go-between listed Nawaz Sharif as having received 3.5 million rupees.
I'm not going to seek to decide this because this issue is before the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
In the 80s, the Sharif family business, called the Ittifaq Group, grew from humble origins to become one of the country's largest enterprises. Though some of the Sharif family mills are now almost derelict, at the start of the 90s they prospered, with methods that were as farcical as they were illegal. What Malik investigated and put before the court were allegations that the family, having moved money out of Pakistan in the good times, were now bringing it back when they needed it. His case began with a bank account in the name of a Mr. Sulman Zia, a name that became central to his investigations. Downtown Lahore, where Mr. Zia's account was opened in 1992 at this bank. Malik's inquiries showed mysterious deposits of hundreds of thousands of dollars paid into the account in travelers' checks.
Traveler check amounting to US dollars 700,000.
700,000
in one account,
in travelers'
yes.
checks.
So it was very intriguing for us. So that gives us the suspicion that it is money laundering.
Bank records obtained by Malik show that in one 7-month period alone, the fortunate Mr. Zia had travelers' checks worth over $1.5 million paid into his account. I tried to pay a modest $5 into Mr. Zia's account. The account still exists. The bank confirmed both the name and the number. But while the account is obviously real, Malik claims Mr. Zia is not. The money, his FIA men told the court, was the Sharif's. But there was no paperwork to prove it. And what if there really was a Mr. Zia? On the account application form, Mr. Zia's occupation was described vaguely as agriculturalist. The address given was Main Bazaar, Sahiwal, though curiously it said no correspondence. We went to Sahiwal to try and find a Mr. Sulman Zia, or even just his address in the main bazaar.
भाई दबे वो मेन बाजार का नाम नहीं साथ बाजार का नाम होगा ना जैसे पाकपतन मेन बाजार पाकपतन बाजार साथ बाजार का नाम भी बताया जाए फिर पता चलेगा इस तरह मेन बाजार कोई नहीं है शहर में.
Salman Zia, he's a fake man. He doesn't exist.
The trail led to London. Malik claimed that millions of dollars issued from the Zia and other fake accounts had been paid into accounts opened back in Pakistan in the names of a London family, a family called the Kazis. Unlike the mysterious Salman Zia, the Kazis really existed. They had passports, but the passports were British. None of the family had even been in Pakistan when the accounts opened in their names were opened there. The trail to the Kazis led past the city, well past it. It led to Ilford in Essex. The Kazis' home is in this busy Ilford High Street. To the family's bemusement, letters started dropping through their letterbox from the banks in Pakistan. The good news for the Kazi family was that accounts opened in their names had millions of dollars in them. The bad news was that it was being used as a way of guaranteeing loans to Pakistani companies. Companies connected to the family of the Prime Minister of Pakistan. One day, Kashif Kazi opened a letter that said he had over $2 million. But it had been used for a loan to Hudaybiyah Engineering, a Sharif family company which had not paid any of its dues. Kashif Kazi was now being asked to please arrange the payment. Another worrying letter warned, in spite of the bank's repeated reminders and constant follow-up, it had not received any payment from the Sharif company money had been lent to. This now somewhat decrepit factory is one of those the money in the Kazi accounts had been lent to. It was part of a scheme to bring black money back into the country without it being taxed and without revealing where it had come from. The Qazis deny any involvement in the opening of the Lahore accounts. So was there any connection between them and the Sharifs? Speculation in Pakistan has centred round a mutual friend. He's a man who, in the 70s, was a paying guest of the Qazis when he was studying in London, Mr. Ishaq Dar. Mr. Dar was unavailable for interview, but he did write to us. He said the Qazis are friends of himself and the Sharifs. The Qazis had been treated not just like friends, it was suggested, but like official state guests. The story of the Zia and Qazi accounts was the basis of the cases the FIA brought against senior members of the Sharif family. They were accused of using fake accounts to bring black money back into the country and avoid paying tax. The court was told of a tax case in which directors of a Sharif company were said to have opened accounts in a dubious manner to whiten the black money. Its report, the court was told, showed that the directors of Sharif company Hudaybiyah Paper Mills had, with the blessings of Nawaz Sharif, not only involved themselves in money laundering, but also defrauded the government. Nawaz Sharif's return to power in '97 came while the charges were still going through the courts. The court was told the FIA now believed there was a Salman Zia, who is a resident of Essex, and even claimed to have found his passport number. But the confusion persists. We noticed the number was the same on that of the passport of the hapless Mr. Kashif Qazi.
There were several complaints and several cases which were being heard. And the Prime Minister did not want me to hear those cases, because he was under the impression that as Prime Minister he was exempted from the proceedings in the court.
The Chief Justice felt his fears were justified when pro-Sharif demonstrators stormed the Supreme Court, and the police stood aside. The case, which could have led to the Prime Minister's dismissal, was abandoned. The London High Court told Nawaz Sharif's father and brother Shahbaz to pay the bank millions of pounds. They had personally guaranteed the bank's loan to a Sharif family company that had also borrowed money against the Qazi accounts. The allegation is that the Sharifs have the beneficial use of apartments whose ownership is registered in a foreign tax haven. Last September, a Pakistani paper published a photograph of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif outside the apartments. He was being greeted by his son, Hussein. The electoral roll shows one of the apartments, number 17, is home to 3 people with the surname Sharif, including a Mr. Hussein Sharif.
My clients took security for that investment through personal guarantees which were offered by 3 members of the Sharif family in Pakistan. We've obtained a judgment in respect of those guarantees against the Prime Minister's brother for in excess of $17 million and against the Prime Minister's father for in excess of $14 million. We would like the judgment debtors to come to court in this country and explain what assets they have here and abroad which can be used to satisfy that debt.
The tragedy is that, as a nation, Pakistan has yet to learn how to rid itself of the spectre that has haunted it for so long, the spectre of corruption.